Have you had an opportunity to think about the issue that came up earlier today with respect to the note that I have marked as question form number 173?
Yes, Your Honor.
And how would you like, and for the record, I think we actually were on break for more than an hour, as it turns out, although I don't know how much of that time you actually had to think about this or to work on this, but how would you like the court to proceed?
At this point in time, to begin with, we think we need to question individually the three jurors that were mentioned by juror number 673 as being present when these comments were made. We think we should do that individually. We understand that the court will probably want to ask questions of the jurors first. Our request would be that we be allowed to ask follow-up questions, possibly with the court's approval. And then we are prepared to make some decisions about what we think needs to happen after that based upon the responses that these jurors give.
Do you have a preference or a position as to which of the three jurors should be questioned first?
No, we'll leave that to the court's discretion.
All right. The people, Mr. Orman?
Your Honor, I agree with what counsel suggested, although I think that in the middle of a trial, under these circumstances, all the questions should be done by the court. I don't think attorneys should be questioning these jurors at this point.
That's my position as well. However, I will give counsel an opportunity to suggest questions that they think I should ask. And so we will proceed as we have been doing throughout the trial in terms of questioning jurors individually about any issues. I will ask the questions. I will then ask the juror to step out, and I will ask counsel if there are any additional questions that they think are appropriate or that they would like me to ask. And then we'll proceed in that fashion, okay?
Understood.
All right.
Which juror is the court considering beginning with?
I'm going to bring in juror number 495 first. That's the juror sitting in seat number 8. So let's have juror 495, please. Good morning. Still morning. It's 5 till 12, so good morning.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks.
All right. I brought you in because I have been informed that a juror may have made statements about this case last week and this week, and that may have happened in your presence during one of the breaks or during a couple of breaks. Do you recall any jurors making any statements related to anything with respect to this case in the last couple of weeks during one of the breaks?
And it was last week?
Last week and yesterday. And it would have been in the lounge area downstairs.
Not that I can immediately recall, no.
Okay. You don't remember anybody making any statements with respect to this case or anybody saying anything related to hearing things about this case?
There was mention of maybe looking at something on a phone.
Okay, tell me about that. Who did you hear make the statement?
I was Danielle.
Without using any
Oh, I'm
names,
sorry. I
please.
don't know a juror
Do you know where she sits in the courtroom?
in the middle row.
The middle row.
Yeah,
Do you know
towards
where?
the end or the end.
All the way at the end of the middle row? Oh, on this end.
Right.
Okay. All right. And what did you hear her say?
It
And
was
for the record, she's pointing at seat number 9, where juror number 872 sits. Okay, go ahead.
I can't remember what had happened that day. It was something, I don't know, we'd had a long break or something unusual had happened. And what I heard was just jokingly, well, we can go check the news to see what's going on. But I did not see her actually get her phone out.
Did you hear her say anything more
No.
with respect to that?
No.
Did you hear her make any other statements related to the case in any way?
No.
And have you heard her at any point before make any statements about the case?
Not before that, no. And not since that.
And not prior to that and not since that?
Right.
So at any point you haven't heard her say anything with respect to this case?
No.
Or information she may have claimed to have about the case or anything like that?
No.
No. How about, have you heard any other juror make those statements?
No.
No.
Mm-mm.
Okay. And do you sometimes go to the lounge area downstairs?
I do.
And who else? Is there a group of you who usually goes there, or does it vary?
On our breaks,
Yes.
there's a constant group of people. During lunch, there's more people that tend to go out there.
But during the breaks, it's just a few of you?
Right.
And who would those few be? You, the juror in seat number 9, juror 872, and who else?
I could not tell you their numbers.
Okay. And do you know their seat numbers?
I know one's in the back row middle, maybe fourth over there. And then I think the third seat right here.
Okay. All right.
I'm bad enough with names, so
That's
throwing
okay.
numbers on top of it is
And
too
when
much.
that's okay, I'm sorry. And the third seat, she's pointing to seat number 19, where juror number 412 sits.
I think that's where she sits.
Okay. And then in the top row, you don't know exactly where. You said somewhere in the top row.
I want to say it's the fourth row, or fourth seat
From
on the top.
From the
From
right.
the left. From your right, yes.
And so that would be seat number 5.
And then,
Are these, oh, sorry. Go
sorry,
ahead.
one more person I just thought of at the very end of the middle row, to your right.
And that would be in seat number 16, juror number 673. All right. That tends to be, to the best of your recollection, the group of folks who is there during the breaks is from what you can remember, correct?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, let me have you step out for just a moment,
Okay.
please. Thank you. Give us just a moment. All right, the record should reflect that juror number 495 has now stepped out of the courtroom. Are there any other questions that the prosecution would request that I ask of this juror?
I think you covered it, Your Honor.
All right, any other questions, Mr. King?
Judge, my colleagues may have a suggestion, but my one suggestion is, my recollection is that juror 673 indicated that this conversation, at least the conversation that took place yesterday, took place on the patio
Okay.
And so I didn't know, I know that you referred to the lounge area. I'm unfamiliar with any of these areas, but maybe it would jog her memory if you were to mention the patio area. And
I will do that. I thought that she had referred to the lounge, but I'll ask the patio. That's what I was referring to, and it sounds like that's where the group of folks tends to hang out during the breaks. The only one she added that juror number 673 had not mentioned is possibly juror 535, who sits in seat number 5. So, but I'm happy to bring her back and make sure that she understood that as the patio.
And my understanding or my thought was that perhaps they were taking a smoke break out there.
That's possible, yeah.
The other
Okay.
question that I'm being asked is whether or not this juror has heard anything about media reports on the case from any source.
I will ask that. All right, let's bring her back, please. Although I think the last question is covered by some of my other questions, but I'll ask it anyway. The record should reflect that juror number 495 is back in the courtroom. Thank you for your patience. I want to follow up on some of the discussion we had, because I want to make sure that we're talking about the same thing. When I refer to the lounge area, did you understand that as the patio as well downstairs outside?
Yes.
Okay, where sometimes, do jurors smoke there sometimes?
Yes.
Yes, okay. And so that's what you were referring to?
Right.
All right, and that's the place that you were referring to when you were talking about those few of you who during the breaks go there to smoke and hang out?
Right.
Okay. And the other follow-up question I had is, have you heard any media reports about the case since the trial started?
I have not, no.
Okay. Have you heard anything reported about the case in the media through any means, whether it's TV, radio, newspaper, magazines, internet, social media, through any means? Have you heard or seen any reports about the case from the media?
Not, I mean, if I see something, then I just turn the page or scroll past it really quick. I have not read anything or heard anything.
Okay, so you've been following all of my advisements?
Yes.
And have you complied with each and every single one of my advisements since we started this trial?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you. Let me have you step out again.
Okay.
Thank you for your patience. All right, I'm going to bring in the next juror, who is juror number 412, unless there are any other questions that the parties want me to ask of juror number 495. Any other questions?
The only other question, Judge, and I apologize for not thinking of this earlier, is to ask her why she did not inform the court of this previously. My understanding is that you've instructed this jury very, very clearly over and over again that if there's any violation in any way of the court's orders by themselves or by other jurors from any source, that they're to notify the court. And that's potentially a violation of the court order that could affect this juror's future service.
Well, what she said was that there was mention of maybe looking something on a phone. And then she said that she thought that the person was joking. So it didn't sound like what she heard was that someone actually looked something up on the phone, but that she said she could to try to find out what was going on because this was a long break. And then she said that she thought he was joking. I will bring her back and clarify that just to be sure, okay? Let's bring her back, please. All right, the record should reflect that juror number 495 is now back in the courtroom. Let me follow up on this statement that you think you heard. What I heard you say is that you heard during one of the breaks that there was mention of maybe looking something on a phone.
Right.
And when do you think that happened? Doesn't have to be the exact day, if you can remember this week or last week or before last week or something along those lines.
It wasn't this week.
So not yesterday or today,
No.
okay?
Early last week?
You think maybe early last week?
Yeah.
And what exactly is it that you heard this person say?
Just, there was, like I said, there was a long break or something. And so we were excited, an extra break or something, so we were excited to go outside, and was just mentioned, well, let me get on my phone and check the news.
And did you actually see her check?
I did not see her check the news.
Did you believe that she had violated one of the court's orders?
I took it as her jokingly saying it.
And you didn't actually see her?
And I did not actually see her at that time do it.
After she said that, did she start using her phone, or do you know whether she started using her phone for any purpose?
I don't specifically remember. I mean, all of us take our phones out there, and we're on them pretty much constantly while we're out there. So, she could have even said it while being on her phone. But I didn't put any... I took it as her saying it jokingly.
Okay, you didn't believe that she was in violation of one of my
Right.
advisements that I have been giving you.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Do you remember anything else about that event?
No, I mean, it was just a fleeting passing comment, and then we all just carried on with what we were doing.
And do you know who else was present when she made that comment?
It would have been the people that I mentioned before, with the exception of maybe the person in the very back row. She doesn't tend to stay out as long as we do.
Okay, the person that you said 4 seats in from the right hand looking at the jury box.
Right.
It would be my right hand side, 4
Right.
seats in. That would be the person sitting in seat number 5, juror number 535. Okay.
Right, that would be the only person that, like I said, we go out there and she doesn't tend to stay out there as long.
So you think she wasn't there?
I can't say for sure, but
You don't know.
she may have been, right.
Okay, you don't know if she was or not.
Right.
Okay. All right, great. Let me have you step out again, please. Thank you. Thanks for your patience. Okay, the records reflect that juror number 495 has now exited the courtroom. Are there any other questions, Mr. King?
No, Judge.
All right, let's bring the next juror in. Let's bring the juror in seat number 19, juror number 412, please.
Judge, I noted that the court didn't instruct that juror not to discuss this with any of the other jurors. I didn't know if the court wanted to do that or to remind the court to do that with the future.
Let's do that. Hold on. Hold on just a second. Sorry. Could you bring 495 back, please, and have her go back to her room for that? Have 412 go back to her room and bring back 495, please. Thank you for reminding me.
Sorry about that, Juror.
No, that's okay. Thank you. The record should reflect that juror number 495 is now back in the courtroom. Thank you again. I just wanted to instruct you not to discuss anything that we've talked about here with you alone with any of the jurors. Will you promise that you will do that?
Absolutely.
Okay, so do not discuss what I've asked you about. Do not discuss the information you've given me in response to my questions, or the fact that we called you in here. Do not discuss any of this with the other jurors.
Okay.
Will you promise to do that?
I promise.
Okay. All right. And
All right.
will you promise to continue to follow each and every one of my advisements?
I will. I promise.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
The record should reflect that juror number 412 is now present in the courtroom. Good afternoon.
Hello.
I brought you in because I wanted to ask you whether you've heard any juror make a statement of any kind about the case during one of the breaks, and specifically last week and yesterday, and in terms of location, specifically in the patio downstairs or in the lounge area.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
I don't.
You don't recall hearing anything?
No. Sometimes we talk about like quotes and clothes and shoes, but I don't remember hearing anything about the case.
Okay, clothes and shoes. The clothes you may be wearing and shoes you may be wearing?
Yeah.
Okay, when you say quotes, what does that mean?
Like air quotes.
Oh, okay. Air quotes, but not related to this case?
No.
And not related to anything happening in these proceedings?
No.
All right. And let's expand it to before last week. Have you heard at any time any juror make a statement anywhere, whether in the patio or anywhere else, about this case?
I've heard people talk about the length, going over 5 o'clock, past 5, 5:30, 6.
Okay, so scheduling, and
Scheduling.
my staff talks to you folks about that often in terms of how late you can stay and that kind of thing as well.
Right.
But what about anything else in terms of the case or in terms of what might be reported in the media or in any media reports? Have you heard anyone comment about what information related to the case or information reported by the media related to the case? Have you heard anyone make a comment about that? And when I say anyone, I'm referring to one of the jurors.
No.
No? And my understanding is sometimes during the breaks you go to the patio with a few other jurors. Is that right?
I do.
Have you heard any such comments while you're there at the patio made by any juror statements related to the case or what may have been reported about the case in the media or anything like that?
Specifically talking about the media?
Anything related to the case?
No, just talking about schedules and stuff. And,
Okay.
I tend to play my phone.
Okay, that's okay.
So.
That's all right. All right.
No.
Have you received any information or seen or heard or read any information about the case in any media reports since the case started?
I look at Huffington Post, but I scroll past anything that has to do with anything.
Related to the case?
Yes.
And so you're following my advisement to avoid any stories about the case?
Yes, I don't look at the news. I don't watch the news with my family. We don't even watch it anymore. I watch Rachel Maddow.
Okay.
That's
And
it.
you've been following my advisements, each and every one of my advisements, since we started this trial?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And I want to make sure that I open it up because initially I asked you questions about during one of the breaks in the patio downstairs, and I said last week or maybe yesterday, but let's open it up without any restrictions as to location and without any restrictions as to time. Have you ever heard a juror make a statement or make a comment about the case or about information from the media related to the case?
I can't think of any that I've heard and processed, I guess. I can't think of any that I've paid any attention to anything about the media.
All right. Even if you weren't paying attention and processing it, have you heard any juror make any statements about the case or information in the media about the case, whether you happen to be part of the conversation or whether you happen to not be specifically talking to the juror but happen to overhear what the juror said? Have you heard a juror make any statements in any way related to the case, including information in the media about the case?
I'm trying to recollect anything I may have heard, and I just, specifically the media, nothing.
Or even if it's not specifically related to the media, related to anything in any way related to the case, that's not scheduling. You know, anything related to the proceedings or what's happening here in the courtroom related to the case in that way. Have you heard anyone make a statement like that that comes to mind?
No, just like I said, the scheduling, sometimes shoes that people wear, clothes, outfits,
Okay.
hairstyles.
All right. Got it. All right. Thank you. Let me have you step out for just a moment, please. All right, the record should reflect that juror number 412 has now stepped out of the courtroom. Are there any other questions that the people would like me to ask this juror, Mr. Orman?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Any other questions from you, Mr. King?
No, thank you.
All right. Thank you. Let's bring her back one more time, please. The record should reflect that juror number 412 is back in the courtroom. Ma'am, thank you for your time. Please don't discuss with anyone what we've talked about here, okay?
Yes,
Will you promise me to do that? That you will?
absolutely.
Okay, thank you. So don't discuss anything I asked you. Don't discuss anything you said. Don't discuss any of this conversation that I've had with you one-on-one, okay?
Yes,
All right. And will you promise that you will continue to follow each and every one of my advisements throughout the trial?
yes,
And I should also tell you, don't infer anything from this discussion, okay? Don't try to speculate. I wonder why he's asking me the question. You shouldn't do that at all. Will you promise me that you will not do that?
yes.
All right, great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
The record should reflect that juror number 412 has now exited the courtroom. Let's bring in finally juror number 872, please.
Judge, before this juror comes in, I believe that 673 said specifically that there was something that came up on her Facebook feed, and maybe the court wants to inquire about that.
Okay, thank you. The record should reflect that juror number 872 is now present in the courtroom. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I wanted to bring you in because I wanted to ask you if you have been exposed to information about the case from a media report or any media reports, whether it's through the internet, newspaper, or social media, including Facebook, your Facebook feed.
No. I mean, my last, I think it was Thursday or Friday, my husband called me and he had asked me a question regarding something he's seen on Facebook, something about Twitter or something. And he was on speaker and I told him, look, I don't know anything about it. And that was basically the gist of it. Other than that, I haven't.
What did he say to you about Twitter?
Well, he asked me if I knew who the lawyer was, and I said no. Why? And he was like, well, that idiot's tweeting on Facebook, and that was pretty much how it goes on. He knows that I'm not supposed to talk about it, and I don't read the newspaper, and when I watch TV, it's not the news. So, I mean, him and I got into a really big argument about it because he knows, and it just so happened to be when we were on lunch.
And have you heard any other information about related to the case, whether through your husband or anyone else, or whether through the internet or any media reports from any source? Have you heard any information about the case?
No. And even if I'm on Facebook or something, if I do see like the headlines of it, I don't click the link. I specifically stay away for that reason.
And have you seen any of the headlines and read any of the headlines?
Not knowingly. You just skim over them. But other than that, I don't like pick them out to find them.
Have you discussed some of this Twitter information that you received from your husband with other jurors?
No. I don't know what her juror number was, but she was sitting right next to me when my husband had called me, and then when I hung up the phone with him, it was just kind of like, oh, what was that about? And I was like, well, I don't know.
What you said, I don't know?
Yeah. I told her, I was like, well, apparently this is what happened on Twitter.
And what did you tell her happened on Twitter?
Just that one of the lawyers had tweeted about, I don't even know what the tweet was about. I just know that he tweeted about the case during a testimony. I didn't read the tweet. I don't know what the tweet was about.
And when was this?
I think it was sometime last week. I don't remember.
And did your husband provide any other information to you about?
No. I basically that was it, and then I got off the phone with him.
Did he say anything else related to the attorney or the party, which side it was, or anything like that he was referring to?
No, he just asked. Well, he asked me who George Brockler was, or who Brockler was, and I said, well, he's one of the lawyers. And he was like I said, he said, well, that idiot tweeted during the testimony, and that was it. I didn't ask what he tweeted or anything like that.
During the breaks, do you usually hang out in the patio downstairs, in the lounge area with a few other jurors?
Occasionally.
Occasionally?
Occasionally, and if I don't, I'm out for lunch.
Okay. All right, and do you remember talking to the other jurors about any of this conversation you had with your husband?
I don't.
All
I
right.
mean, if this happened yesterday, maybe, but honestly, I don't remember. I don't think I did, because I didn't have a conversation with anybody about it specifically. We didn't sit down, we didn't talk about it in conversation. It was just more of a in passing kind of thing.
Why didn't you bring it up to my attention? I've been telling jurors throughout that even if despite their best efforts they inadvertently come upon any information related to the case, whether it's accurate or not, or whether it's directly from the media or not, if they inadvertently come up on, or hear or overhear any information about the case, they should tell my staff that they need to talk to me.
Right. You know, I mean, there's no excuse for me not telling you. It was more so I just really don't pay attention to my husband most of the time. So it wasn't really that important at that time. I didn't expect, you know, anything out of it. So it was just kind of pushed under the rug and forgot about.
Okay, let me have you step out for just a moment, please. Thank you. The record should reflect that juror number 872 has now stepped out of the courtroom. Are there any other questions that the people want me to ask this juror?
Well, Your Honor, I think that the original juror number 673, it also indicated a statement about a motion for a mistrial. I mean, that's awfully a specific question to ask, though.
Right, that's why I didn't ask it.
So I'm not asking anything about that. I just thought I would mention that that was not discussed with her.
Right. Mr. King, any other questions that you want me to ask?
I agree with Mr. Orman's comment about that. I noted that as well. I also noted that the information from Juror 673 is rather specific about the information contained in the Twitter or tweet or whatever it is itself,
Right.
Pertaining to the video, and it seemed to match very closely what the actual tweet was. I would ask, if I recollect correctly, Juror 872 said that this phone call with her husband was on speaker. So perhaps we should ask if the others were there. It sounds like the others were there and overheard it, and that's why they had a conversation about it. I'm pretty unclear about that, but
I will follow up with juror number 872 about that.
and perhaps we should also ask her if there was a second incident. I suppose you have asked if there are any other incidents, so.
I have, and I just didn't want to ask, did you hear anything about a mistrial? That would be improper, so I'll bring her back and ask her about whether there was a second incident, and I'll ask her if, when she had her husband on speaker, if there were other jurors around within distance to hear what was being said. But regardless, I have some concerns about this juror, and if the parties are in agreement, and maybe this will make the additional questions, although I think it makes sense to ask the additional questions, so I will ask them, but if the parties are in agreement, I am inclined to let her go, to excuse her. So is there any objection?
Can I have a moment, Your Honor?
Yes. I mean, clearly, there has been a violation of my advisements. My advisements say you cannot obtain any information about the case, and if you obtain information about the case, even inadvertently, you have to tell me about it. You have to tell my staff that you need to talk to me. Furthermore, between her and Juror 673, I find Juror 673 to be the more credible juror. And so I don't know that we're getting the full story from this particular juror.
Not object, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. King?
We don't object to her being excused, Judge. We have additional concerns, though. I have concerns, very serious concerns about Juror 412 and the way she responded to the court's questions. So my thought is that we may need to go back and re-question these other jurors again about the information related by Juror 872 to determine whether that's the case. And we may be asking Judge to poll the panel individually about whether anyone has had any contact with this juror or received any information.
Let's take it one step at a time. Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Good, understood.
I have some concerns about juror 412 as well, Mr. King. So she took her time answering questions. She paused. She used words that suggested at times that she was holding something back or might be holding something back, such as saying, not that I heard and processed. I don't know who answers questions that way when they are asked, did you hear something about this? Usually people tell you, no, I haven't heard anything. I didn't have concerns with juror number 495. I thought juror 495 was being forthcoming, and it may well be that she just didn't hear a whole lot, other than she overheard juror number 872 say something along the lines of maybe looking something on a phone, and she thought it was a joke and therefore didn't report it to the court. But I do have some concerns about juror number 412 as well, in terms of her demeanor and how credible she was with me, or perhaps the better word is how forthcoming she was with me. So if the parties are asking me to release 412, I would grant that request.
Judge, may we have a moment, and while we're thinking about that, we have some concerns about 495 as well. There were some long periods of silence when the court was asking its questions, and her statements are in direct contradiction of juror 673. And so that, it sounded better when she said it, but it's contradicted by the very credible statements of juror 673, who specifically identified her. So our request is that you dismiss all three of them at this point in time, Judge. And we have 12 alternate jurors in this case, and that's why we have 12 alternate jurors. And we're well into the case. We're more than halfway through the case, and any kind of discrepancy should be resolved in favor of making sure that this is an impartial juror. And there's no harm in excusing these jurors. Essentially, we believe all four jurors should be excused, Judge. We believe that 673 has been tainted by what she's heard about the case, and I'm willing to deal with that argument too when it comes, but I don't want to jump ahead of myself here. I'm sorry.
I think we're jumping around a little bit. So let's deal one by one. First, there has been no objection already with respect to 872, and so I will release 872. The next question is 412. The defense is asking me to release number 412. And is there any objection to me releasing 412? Yes.
We don't object, Your Honor.
Okay, 412 will be released. I agree with Mr. King. I had some concerns about her credibility when she was in here talking to me. 495, Mr. King is right that her statement is inconsistent with what 673 said. However, it's possible that she just didn't hear it. It's possible that this is not an inconsistency. It's possible that 673 thought that 495 would have heard this comment, but that 495, in fact, did not hear the comment. And so unless there's an agreement to release her as well, I'm inclined to follow up with her, or actually follow up with perhaps 673 and see whether 673 thinks if that 495 was in a position where she would have been able to hear this conversation. I mean, this is not, one word we're talking about. These are a couple of comments, 2 or 3 comments that we're talking about, and so I think 673 may be able to shed further light as to whether she thinks 495 would have been close enough to have been able to hear this. Mr. Orman?
Your Honor, I don't object to that. The only thing I think that should be noted is very often people are around things that are said and don't pay attention or don't remember. And it's possible that 495 was there whenever this conversation occurred, but it just didn't listen to it. And So I agree that there were some pauses with 495, but I think they were very different than the pauses with 412. It seemed to me the pauses with 495 where she was really thinking about trying to give an accurate answer to the court. That's the way it looked to me.
Yeah, that's how it looked to me as well. But I will follow up with 673 before I make a determination with respect to 495, unless you have an objection to that.
No, Judge, I do not, and I don't disagree with Mr. Orman that it's possible that she just didn't hear.
Right.
It's also possible that she did hear, and she doesn't want to tell us to get one of her fellow jurors in trouble, and my position is we should err on the side of caution.
Okay, I got you. I will bring 673 back. In light of the decision to release 872 and 412, do you have any problem with me not following up with 872 as to whether there was a second incident and as to whether she thinks anyone was around within a short distance when she had her husband on her speakerphone? Or do you still want me to follow up with
I
her?
think we need to follow up on that, Judge.
All right, I will follow up on those two questions. Let's bring 872 back, please. All right, the record should reflect that number 872 is now back in the courtroom. Thank you for your patience. A couple of follow-up questions. Was there a second incident where you discussed something related to the case, or someone discussed it with you?
No. The only one that I can think of is the Twitter.
And you said you had your husband on the speakerphone. Do you know whether there were other jurors within a close distance or a short distance who would have been in position to hear what was being said?
Well, there's usually 4 of us that all eat lunch in the same area, and I don't know of the other 2 that heard, but I'm sure the one sitting right next to me heard it.
And who was sitting next to you?
I don't know her juror number.
Where does she sit?
Right here.
Okay, so that would have been juror number 412.
Yeah.
You think she would have heard it?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if she heard it, she didn't say anything to me about it.
But she was sitting right next to you.
Yes.
Who are the other people who usually eat lunch with you? Who would have been there during that time when you had your husband on the speakerphone?
I don't know. But I know she sits up in the back corner, and then the other one, I don't know where she sits.
And the woman who sits in the back corner, it's the top row all the way at the end?
Yes.
And how close would she have been, was she to you?
Well, she was on the other side. I was sitting on the far end of the patio in the shade, and she was over walking in the sun.
Can you estimate for me how many steps she would have been away from you?
Maybe about 25 feet.
25
She was pretty far.
25 feet?
Yeah.
So she was pretty far.
Yeah.
And so, but the other juror number 412 was sitting right next to you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. All right. Give me just a second. I'm going to ask you to step out one more time.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks for your patience. All right. The record should reflect that 872 has now stepped out of the courtroom. That confirms it for me that 412 was not being completely honest with us, or perhaps without the completely. And I think that's what all of us thought, the parties and I, the attorneys and I all thought that, and that corroborates what I had concluded. So at this time, I'm going to bring 872 back and I'm going to excuse her. Then I'm going to bring 412 back and I'm going to excuse her. Neither one of them is going to be allowed to enter any of the jury rooms while the other jurors are in there. They're going to be taken downstairs, and then when the jurors are not around, they'll be escorted so that they can get their possessions, and they will be escorted out of the building. Okay, and then we'll proceed from there. Any objection?
I don't object to that, Your Honor. My question is the court going to give any type of advisement?
I will. Okay, let's bring 872 in. Thank you. Say 72 coming, juror 72. Okay. Okay, the record should reflect that juror number 872 is back in the courtroom. Ma'am, I'm going to go ahead and excuse you at this time. So you are discharged from jury service in this case. I want to advise you that you are prohibited from talking to any of the other jurors in the case. I know that you may have made acquaintanceships or friendships with some of the other jurors. You cannot talk to them while they remain on the jury. Do you understand that?
Yes.
And you also cannot talk to the members of the media. I'm prohibiting you from talking to the members of the media until the trial is completed.
Okay.
Do you understand?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. The record should reflect that juror number 872 has now exited the courtroom. Just for the record, I have also entered an order in this case which prohibits the media from talking to any jurors, even if they are discharged from the trial until the trial is completed. So, just as a reminder. All right, let's bring juror number 412 in at this time, please. The record should reflect that juror number 412 is back in the courtroom at this time. Ma'am, I'm going to go ahead and excuse you at this time. You're excused and discharged from jury duty in this case. You are not allowed to talk to any of the other jurors as long as the trial is pending, as long as the trial is continuing. You also are prohibited from talking to any members of the media until the trial is completed. And when I say trial, I mean the entire thing, including any proceedings that may be had in this case. Do you understand?
I do.
All right, thank you. You're discharged. All right, next I propose bringing in juror number 673 and following up with her. Is that okay with everyone?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, let's bring 673 back, please. The record should reflect that juror number 673 is back in the courtroom. Ma'am, I want to thank you again for doing the right thing. You did the right thing, and I very much appreciate you doing this. I brought you back in because I want to follow up on the discussion we had earlier. You indicated that at the time that you heard these statements by the juror who sits in seat number 9, juror number A72, that there were a couple of people present, a few people present, and one of the people that you identified is the person who sits in the top row all the way at the end, which is seat number 8. That's juror number 495. And my question is, do you remember how close she was in terms of distance to the person making the statements? In other words, I'm trying to figure out what is it that made you believe that she may have heard these statements?
Honestly, it's because it's usually the four of us talking. And so, I mean, maybe she was farther away from the group that was talking. But usually we're close enough to where it's easy to hear.
So usually you're close enough to each other that you'd be able to hear.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, if she didn't hear it, she didn't hear it. I know that all four of us were standing around.
And juror number 872, the juror who sits in seat number 9, didn't make the statement just to you.
No.
She just made the statement.
Yes.
Did you see her at any point speaking on her phone, on speakerphone with anyone?
No.
No, you didn't see that part?
No.
And you didn't hear her talking to her husband on speakerphone about anything?
No.
But you remember her making the statements that you said she made both last week and also yesterday?
Yes.
And do you think in both incidents the person who sits in seat number 8, juror number 495, was in the area, the vicinity?
Yes. I know yesterday for sure.
For sure yesterday she was in the vicinity?
Yes.
Okay.
And then I'm pretty sure, almost positive, that the other time as well.
Okay. What about the person who sits in the 4th seat from the end in the top row? I understand that sometimes she goes on break with you folks in the patio, juror number 535. Do you know whether she was there?
I don't. That's why I didn't mention her.
Okay. Do you recall her not being there or her being there, or do you just not remember?
I don't remember.
You don't remember. Okay. All right. Thank you, ma'am. Let me have you step out again. Thank you very much. Okay, the record should reflect that juror number 673 has now stepped out of the courtroom again. Given that record, I'm inclined to grant the defense's request to release number 495. I think 673, juror number 673 is the most honest of all these jurors that I've spoken to today. And I believe what she says. I think she's being very candid with the court. I think this was a hard thing for her. She's not looking like she's getting any pleasure out of this at all. This is actually seemingly painful for her, but I think she's doing it because she felt it was the right thing to do, and I appreciate her doing that. But I find her to be the most honest of all the jurors. And if she's telling me that juror number 495 was in the vicinity, then I believe her. And again, you know, this isn't a one-word type of thing. There are multiple comments, and I think it's likely that juror number 495 would have heard some, if not all, of these comments. So I'm inclined to grant the request. Is there any objection?
I don't object, Your Honor.
All right, I will release number 495. So before we take 673 back to the jury room, she's waiting in the hallway, right? Yes. Mr. King, I think you had said that you might have a request to excuse her, or perhaps you actually made the request to excuse 673. Do you want to make that request still?
Yes, please.
Okay.
And I could not agree with the court more. I think that she's doing the right thing. I think that she's being very honest. I'm just very concerned about the nature of the information that she's been revealed to. She now knows about a mistrial. A request for a mistrial that was denied, that's likely could have a prejudicial effect. She knows about the tweeting thing and Lord knows what else. So I just think I'm requesting that we dismiss her as well.
Well, what she has heard, number one, she didn't hear from the media directly or from any news source directly. She heard it from another juror who claimed that she got it from her Facebook feed. So for one thing, she doesn't know if this is accurate or not, and she said that when she was in here. Number two, she heard that they have tried to call a mistrial, but she said she didn't know which side, and that the attorneys have now been prohibited from using or from having phones in the courtroom, and that one of the attorneys posted on Twitter that he or she hoped the jury saw part of the video, and the judge was mad, but she didn't know which attorney it was, and she didn't know if it was a female or male attorney, and she didn't know if it was a prosecutor or a defense attorney. And she didn't know what came of if anything, of the attempt by anyone to call a mistrial. So I read the People versus Moore case, 321 Pacific 3rd, 310, a Colorado Court of Appeals case from 2010, and that case is not on point, but that's a case in which it was revealed to the court that there had been that the jury had been exposed to a newspaper article containing prejudicial information about the defendant, and the court set forth the analysis that trial court judges should engage in if this situation arises. And what the Court of Appeals said is that a trial court should deal with juror exposure to prejudicial publicity during the trial as follows. Number one, the trial court must determine whether the publicity is inherently prejudicial. Number two, if so, the court should canvass the jury to determine whether the jury learned of the prejudicial publicity. And number three, the trial court should individually examine exposed jurors to determine how much they know of the publicity and what effect, if any, the publicity will have on their deliberations. Now, I have questioned multiple jurors now, including juror number 673. This information that juror 673 heard, in my view, is not inherently prejudicial information to the defendant. She doesn't know who it was related to. She only knows vague or general details. And Mr. King said, who knows what else she has heard? We can't have it both ways. We can't on the one hand say, boy, she's really honest and really candid with the court, and on the other hand say, who knows what else she heard that she's not telling us? I think we either trust her and rely on her or we don't. And I find her very reliable and trustworthy. I think she's being very candid with the court. And so when she tells me, this is what I've heard, I believe her completely. And so if this is all she's heard, I don't see how this is inherently prejudicial to the defendant. And then I have examined her individually, and I will examine her further, but I have examined her about what effect, if any, the publicity will have on her deliberations, or actually I asked on her ability to be fair and impartial, and she said none. I can still be fair and impartial. I will still be fair and impartial. I will bring her back and ask her about what effect, if any, this information may have on her deliberations, or what effect, if any, it will have on any decision she makes in this trial, and whether this information will at any point influence her in any way or affect her decision-making or be in the back of her mind at any point during the trial. Do the people have a position on the defense's request, Mr. Orman?
I agree with Your Honor, and don't think this type of information is inherently prejudicial. I would just contrast it with the information would be prejudicial, and this is Perry versus People. It's an old case, 163rd Pacific, not 2nd, 3rd, 844 from Supreme Court of Colorado, 1917. But in that case, Your Honor, apparently the jury had been exposed to information that the defendant in the criminal case had attempted to escape from custody in the course of the trial. That's the type of information that I think might be inherently prejudicial for a juror to hear. This is, at best, procedural information. It's not even factual information about any defendant in particular. So I completely agree with what the court said.
Okay, let me bring her back. Let's bring back number 673, please, so I can follow up. Okay, thank you. The record should reflect that juror number 673 is back in the courtroom. Thank you again. I want to follow up on the discussions that we've had and the questions we've had. As you sit here, can you remember anything else that you heard related to the case that you haven't told me about yet?
No.
If at any point you happen to remember something else, will you please tell me that?
Yes.
And again, will you promise not to discuss it with any other jurors?
Yes.
And will you promise not to discuss what you and I have talked about here today, throughout today, with any other jurors?
Yes.
I asked you earlier whether the information you heard was going to affect your ability to be fair and impartial in this case, and you told me that it would not, and you seemed confident in your answer. Are you confident that this will not affect you in your ability to be fair and impartial throughout these proceedings?
Yes, I am.
Will you promise me as you're sitting here that you will be fair and impartial throughout these proceedings?
Yes.
Does this information, do you think, make you biased in any way against one side or the other?
No, because I have no idea which side did what.
Okay. And you have no idea whether this information is even accurate that you heard, correct?
Right.
Okay. Do you think this is information that's going to affect you in any way throughout this trial?
No.
Will it influence you in any way throughout this trial?
No.
Will it be in the back of your mind as we move on throughout this trial or at any point in this trial?
In terms of...
Is that going to be something that's going to be in the back of your mind that you're going to be considering as you're hearing evidence, as you're hearing my instructions, or as the trial goes on?
No.
Will this information affect any of the decisions that you make in this case?
No.
Will it affect, will any part of this information affect your deliberations?
No.
Do you have any concerns as you sit here about your ability and willingness to be a fair and impartial juror in this trial?
No.
And how about any concerns with respect to being a fair, making sure that this is a fair trial, fair to both parties, and that it is an impartial trial? In other words, that it is not partial or biased to one side or the other.
No, I'm not biased or partial to one side at all.
And this doesn't change any of that?
No.
Any other concerns at all that you want to talk to me about?
No.
Okay. And you told me that you will promise not to talk to any other jurors about any of this at any point, including during deliberations?
Correct.
And if at any point you happen to remember something else, will you promise me that you will tell my staff that you need to talk to me?
Yes.
And so even if it's 2 weeks from now, something happens that triggers part of the memory that you have of this conversation that perhaps you're not remembering right now, will you tell my staff that you need to talk to me so that you can tell me about other information that you have remembered about the incidents that we've talked about today?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Let me have you step out. Thank you. All right, the record should reflect that juror number 673 has stepped out of the courtroom at this time. Based on that additional record, Mr. King, I'm going to deny your request. I understand the request, but I am comfortable that this juror can and will be fair and impartial and will not be affected in any way by this information throughout the trial, including in her deliberations and in any decisions that she makes in this case. I also am 100% comfortable that if she remembers something else from any of the conversations that we've been talking about today in terms of juror number 872 and things juror 872 said, that she will tell me about it. I have no doubt that this juror will tell me about it. So I believe her when she commits to me that if something else comes to mind, she will tell me. And I believe her when she says that she will follow all my instructions and my advisements. And I believe her when she says that she will not discuss any of this with the other jurors and that she will be fair and impartial throughout this trial.
I understand the court's ruling.
All right, thank you. All right, Mr. King, that takes care of I think your request with respect to 872, 472, I got to bring 495 in so I can excuse her, so please bring her in. The record should reflect that juror number 495 is not present in the courtroom. Ma'am, I'm going to go ahead and excuse you at this time. So you are released. You're discharged from your jury service in this case. I'm going to admonish you that you cannot talk to any of the jurors while these trial court proceedings are pending. You also cannot talk to any members of the media about this case while these trial court proceedings are pending. Do you understand that?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, the record should reflect that juror number 495 has now exited the courtroom. All right, Mr. King, I have addressed your request with respect to jurors 872, 412, and 495, and also with respect to 673. So, what's the next request that you have? Would you like me to have juror 535 questioned?
That was going to be my request, Your Honor.
All right, and I think that request is a reasonable one. Let's bring juror number 535 in, please. The record should reflect that juror number 535 is now present in the courtroom. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
How are you?
Okay.
All right, thanks for coming in. I wanted to ask you whether you've heard any juror make any statements related to this case in the last couple of weeks, either last week or this week or both, like during one of the breaks.
When we go outside, I really don't pay that much attention. I just kind of do my thing and I leave.
Okay.
You know, they may, but to tell you what or who, I don't pay attention to it.
And my understanding is that you usually go to the patio on break. And
Uh-huh.
And is that right?
Yes, that's
And
right.
And you hang out with, I think, you don't know juror numbers, but
No, I don't.
I think it's the juror who sits in seat number 9 there.
Right there? Yeah.
And you're pointing to it. The juror who sits all the way up top.
The very end.
The very
oh,
end.
yeah, the very top, and then the very end here, and then on one of these seats here.
And the third seat right there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
Okay. And then who did you say you're talking about when you said the very top? You're talking about at the very end,
The very end,
right?
at the top, the very end on this second row.
Oh, okay. That's
She's there too.
oh, okay. Seat number 16. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Right. I got you.
Sorry.
All right. And so during those times when you were in the patio, did you hear anyone say something about the case or something about the news that may have been reported about the case or something that may have been reported on social media about the case?
You know what? I did hear something, and like I said, I just don't pay any attention to it because I'm so glued to doing that. I remember hearing something said about a mistrial.
Okay.
And but I don't remember. It was
Who do you remember saying that? Okay, and she's pointing to seat number 9. So that would be juror.
Yeah, and well, as soon as that, I turned around and walked out.
What-
And then went into the jury assembly room.
What did you hear her say?
I just heard the word mistrial, and that was it. I remember hearing that, but that's, honest to goodness, that's all I heard.
How about yesterday? Did you hear her say something else yesterday?
No, I really, I wasn't out there, like during lunchtime, I wasn't out there when she was out there.
What made you think when she said the word mistrial that she was talking about this case?
I didn't know. I didn't know she was talking about this case. I just heard, when you said that, it jarred my memory. I remember hearing that word. I don't know what context it was in. I just remember hearing that word, and I came inside.
Do you remember hearing anything else?
No, sir.
Any other part of that statement? You just remember hearing?
I just remember hearing the word mistrial.
And was that in the patio?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
And I can't tell you the date. It was a few days ago.
Did you tell my staff that you needed to talk to me about
No,
something?
because I really wasn't, it didn't even click until you just said that to me just now. I didn't even, I don't know what she was talking about, what context it was in, but I do remember hearing that word.
Okay, let me have you step out.
Okay.
All right, the record should reflect that juror number 535 has now stepped out of the courtroom. Any other questions that the parties want me to ask her? Mr. Orman?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. King?
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, any requests with respect to this juror, Mr. Orman?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. King?
No, Your Honor. I believe this juror, and it seems to comport with what 673 said as well.
Yes, I agree, and I will bring her back and just make sure I advise her that she's not to speculate about any of this and that she's not to talk to any of the other jurors about it. So let's bring her back, please. The record should reflect that juror number 535 is back in the courtroom. Welcome back. I want to thank you for your time, and I want to ask you to not discuss any of this with the other jurors. Will you promise me?
I promise you.
Okay.
I give you
So don't discuss any of my questions to you here today, and don't discuss any of your answers. Okay.
Okay.
Don't tell them why I asked you to come in here alone.
You got it.
Will you promise that?
I promise, I swear.
And also, please don't speculate into why I'm asking you these questions. All right?
Okay.
Okay. Can you promise me that you will put it out of your mind and not speculate about this?
I promise.
All right. And will you promise, have you been following all my advisements from the beginning of the trial?
Yes, sir.
And will you continue to follow each and every one of my advisements related to your conduct when you're not here in the courtroom?
You betcha. Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you. All right. Thank you very much. All right, Mr. King, any other requests?
Judge, I have one other request, and I frankly think I already know what the court's response is going to be.
Okay.
I'm going to request that we individually poll the remaining jurors to see if they've had any inadvertent contact to any of this or any other media contact. I would acknowledge what I expect the court is going to say is that looks like we've identified a discrete group of folks that got together because of one of to smoke, and we've questioned all the folks that 673 has said were part of that group. I'm just requesting in an abundance of caution that we individually poll the rest of the jurors, and that's all, Your Honor.
All right. Do the people have a position?
Well, I think it's clear, at least from reading the law from the other states that was quoted in the AmJur article that I mentioned to the court, that this is a matter completely within Your Honor's discretion. And I think that if Your Honor has a discretion to do that if you want, but I don't think it's necessary. First of all, I think frankly doing that might have a chilling effect on the remainder of the jurors if something else happens in the future of the sort of being brought in and interrogated. So I think that there's a negative aspect to it. But frankly, there's just no rationale for it at this point. As Mr. King acknowledged, we have a group of jurors who were out there smoking. They've all sort of indicated who that group is. We've questioned all of them. None of them have indicated that this was conveyed to other people or anything like that. There's just no need to go through all the other jurors when we know the group of people that were involved. So I object to the proposed procedure for those reasons.
Yeah, and I don't think that there's any basis at this time for it. I am satisfied that we have identified the group of folks who were involved or who were around at the time that the statements were made, the improper statements were made by juror number 872. And we've addressed all of the folks who were present during both incidents. I will add during my advisements that if they at any point overhear anyone talking about the case, including another juror, that they need to let my staff know. And that should take care of it. I mean, if they have heard another juror talk about the case, then that should do it. So at this time, the request is denied. Would council please approach so that we can talk about the alternates? All right. Okay, that takes care of the juror issues for now. So we can get back to the normal course of business. I have to give you all a lunch break. Well, I don't have to, but I would like to, so I will do that. You should know that we had lunch brought to the jurors, and so the jurors are having lunch already, and so that'll save us some time. I have to make sure that the sheriff has enough time to give Mr. Holmes his lunch, and so what if we took until 2 o'clock, and then we start again at 2 o'clock and try to get Dr. Metzner done so that he doesn't miss his flight tomorrow? Does that sound reasonable to everyone?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, great. Enjoy your lunch. I'll see you back here at 2 o'clock. The court will be in recess. Thank you.